You won't look in the mirror anymore.
That's right, you don't look in the mirror anymore.
Meetings every day of the week. In fact, I
We getting ready?
advertise
We're gonna have Michelle come back, and then I think we're gonna be all set.
two before.
I think this is
The
it,
other,
yeah.
everyone else isn't here.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah.
Yeah.
We're down to.
Faith and Jenna are not.
And Pollock.
So you set?
I did not agree with that.
Oh, Mike for them, yeah. We could grab one of these and, yeah, we can just grab one.
yeah.
Take one of these, or move them down.
Here we go. And you want to just move them down?
Move that one down, we can move them down. That'll work. Look at that, we are all
Yeah, we're
set.
good, Ken.
We're good, Ken.
Problem
Look at
solving.
that.
Are we on, Ken? We're on.
Because we got an extra.
It's not broadcasting
Got an
yet, but the
extra
mics
one
are on.
here.
Wait a minute. Alfreda, mic down.
Sure.
I changed my hat.
Yeah, so that he can put it on the table, and they've got two.
On the table. I've got it.
Need the Red Sox one.
That one goes down
That
there.
one down, yeah. There we go. Look at that. Are
sorry.
we ever good?
Look at this, team.
We are up. So,
They'll hear us.
we're live. Welcome everyone to this workshop
You know, the cups.
on PEPG, and we will proceed. I think Michelle is going to lead us through this process and introduce what's going on.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Yes.
We're not going to be yelling and screaming at you.
I told you.
Good to know.
Good to know.
Ground rule, no yelling.
Okay, that's right, no yelling, no screaming, no beating on the table.
But it'd be great to have your perspective.
So I'll start by, just remember, this is the third part of a 3-part workshop in response to questions from the community regarding the work we're doing. And one of the questions was Marzano's teacher effectiveness. And so that's why we're reviewing this, is so that you're reminded, oh, that's right, that's why we're doing Marzano. What does it look like when it's put in place? That's what you're going to get a picture of tonight.
He's not on staff, right?
Who?
Marzano.
No, he's not on staff. Michelle can explain what we pay, what we pay for. Well, hi, Jenna. We knew you were coming.
Hi, there she is.
Come sit by me.
Good deal.
And
They're a friendly group.
I do apologize that the data review will be put off for December, which will mean the special ed will be put off to the following December. But they'll be both done in December, just one and then the other. MEA data is still on hold, so we can't release any information until they release it publicly. We have it, we're working on it. It also is giving us time and Sue some time to dive into some other questions regarding our data. So really, it was kind of a gift because we're kind of rushing it, and plus it will fit very nicely with our budget beginnings discussion. So although we're not doing it tonight, we will do it in the future. And Ryan has already been working on the special ed presentation. So we will get both in December, which will be good as we prepare for the budget. Did I say budget twice? Okay, sorry. So I appreciate Michelle working on putting a presentation today. You know, we could talk hours and hours about this. So she's been very good to go over it and over and over to say what are the really crucial information you need at this time. Planning that this won't be the last time we talk about it. So this is the first part. Hopefully, you know, in the spring you'll get a second part, and in the June you'll get a third part, which is our results of what they've been going through for the year. Okay? So Michelle, you're on.
Great. So yes, tonight, performance evaluation, professional growth. We call it in our acronym-heavy world PEPG. So if we slip in there, that's what we're talking about, just to remind you. Basically, what does it mean? It means we want effective teachers for every student every year. That's the nugget right there. That's what performance evaluation professional growth is. Effective teachers for every student every year. Okay. So first of all, you've heard about bright spots in our schools from Katie. Well, our teachers are truly our bright spots. So we thank you tonight, as you just did, Bonnie. Deanna Etienne, kindergarten teacher this year, pre-K last year.
Could
Yes.
you say that again? I didn't hear you.
Deanna Etienne.
Deanna Etienne,
Yes.
because I'd like to learn
Etienne.
names.
Sorry.
Etienne.
Fine.
And
You're used to that one.
Don't
Yeah,
worry.
I'm used to it. It's
I
totally fine. I
don't-
just nod.
Yeah, I know.
You got all the right letters.
If you get it close enough.
Little vowel heavy.
Yes.
here.
Excellent. And I think I can do Laura, your name a little
Yeah.
easier. Laura Merrill.
Merrill.
Teachers at Walton. Laura, you're fifth, sixth?
Fifth and sixth, yeah.
Fifth and sixth this year. And yes, we also have bright spots in our administrative team, and Mike Davis, of course, you know, is the principal at Walton. So tonight, we're going to be talking about the why. We're going to talk about the what performance evaluation professional growth system is, but we're also going to be talking about the why, kind of setting that stage. Why are we bothering to do this? So first of all, what do we know? Well, we know from research, and it certainly makes a whole lot of sense, that the single most important determinant of success for students is the knowledge and the skills of that particular child's teacher. So that's the premise that we come from. If this has been played out in research over time, and it has over, and we can sit here and Dr. Doris could cite research after research, studies that would support this. This is why we do it. If we're about children and all children succeeding, this is why we have an evaluation system that also promotes professional growth. So here's an example of research, just very simply. Give you a minute with that. Basically, it's showing the difference between the effects of the most effective teachers and the impact of a lesser effective teacher, or teacher who's not as effective. And then they compare that to if a student, you know the old, he learns in spite of me. We say that as teachers, as parents, you know, he just learned in spite of me. I don't know how he learned to ride a bike, he just did it, right? So that lighter bar is the typical maturation from normal childhood experiences. So we would expect about a 6% growth if a student was taking a norm reference test, that they would make a 6% percentile growth from typical development, but you can see the difference once we start to have a highly effective teacher and that student is in front of that teacher and working with that teacher every day over the course of the year, you're 52%. So if you have a student who's performing at, say, the 20th percentile, by the end of the year, on average, research has shown that they'll be scoring in the 70th, 72, the 72nd percentile, according to the research. So that's the type of outcome that we can see when you have a highly effective teacher whose practices are on, instructional practices are on. Make sense?
Yep.
Great. Okay, good. So that's the big moral imperative of the why. That's really why we do it. Well, we also have a law that says that we'll have a PEPG system. And so you as the school committee are tasked with making sure that we're following the law. So what does the law say about a PEPG system? So 2013-14, Tom, you were heavily involved with the development committee where we developed a process that we are now using today. And that, I want to just underscore that process, I know you've heard it before, involved stakeholders, including teachers and administrators. In fact, it was predominantly teachers with some administrators who participated as well as other stakeholder groups. At the end of that year, the committee voted, accepted it, and we've been approved by the state, our system. So currently what do? We have a steering committee that meets monthly. And what do? They monitor the system's effectiveness through feedback. So they're talking to teachers in their buildings. Those representatives on the steering committee talk to the teachers in the buildings. That feedback comes back to the steering committee. We use that information to inform what we're doing and if we need to make any changes or address any professional development.
Who's the steering committee?
Who's the steering committee? It's a representative teacher from each school, at least one. Some of our schools have more than one. And administrators. How many do we have right now? 3, maybe. 3 administrators. And Dr. Doris and I work together on that committee. Okay. And it's a feedback loop. It's a continual feedback loop that we use every meeting. Once a year, we put out a survey, and that informs the decisions that we're making. That group also is responsible for assisting teachers in understanding the system, but also growing. So it's not just a matter of rote, low-level understanding, here's what the evaluation system is, but also working to make sure that the teachers understand what the expectations are in terms of the best practices for instruction in the classroom. So there's a lot going on with that committee and what they're involved with back in their buildings.
And it all ties into Wednesday afternoon early release for professional development.
That has been crucial, the addition to secondary, where elementary has had that all along. That's, wouldn't you say,
Absolutely critical.
the bulk
And
of the
it
work?
is the primary of our focus, absolutely.
Yeah, the bulk of the work's been able to be done on the Wednesday afternoons, and so the elementary has, as you've heard before, has moved forward with their understanding of the framework at a high level, so.
Is the Wednesday afternoon something that's mandatory for all teachers, or is it based on their performance, or?
I mean, is the PD customized?
Yeah.
So, yes and no. So right now, because the framework, and we're going to talk about this in a couple minutes, the framework is new to us, to teachers, we're rolling out, making sure that everybody has common understanding of the language in the framework that we're going to talk about. And yes, there is some customization from there that will be continuing to happen on to what level they continue to participate. There's customization that happens more between the building principal and the individual teacher in their plans, and again, we'll talk about that.
I think sometimes too, and you can correct me, but they use teachers to help with the PD, so if they are talking about something, teachers may share, this is what I'm doing to demonstrate that, so they can learn from each other. This is what I'm doing, what are you doing? So sometimes you want those who might be doing something really well to share it with the others, so everyone says, oh, I didn't think of that, that's a really good idea, or like they're doing their professional development plans, you know, their PDCAs, they might say I'll share one out with somebody that's working. So a lot of it is using the expertise in the building to try to help the other.
Particularly as we're ramping up.
Exactly.
And I would also just add to your question about is it mandatory for all? I would say as we become more comfortable with the framework, teachers are more comfortable. As we're moving forward, I think one of the things we're continuing to do is monitoring their progress or their own proficiencies through each element. And so next year or whenever it happens to be, if there are a cohort of teachers who need more support, we're naturally going to take them and say, okay, let's design a little PD session for you so that you can work on your skills in this area. You guys don't need to sit through this because you've got this, but you can be working on other things, and that will relate to what we're going to talk about a little bit later with the teacher plans as well.
It's not a proficiency for teachers.
Yes, yes,
Absolutely.
it really is.
Yes.
And that's the basis of it, yeah, definitely.
Michelle, I have another question on the steering committee. When you guys meet monthly, is it a set agenda that you guys go through for the feedback? Yeah.
Yeah. And I can tell you more specifically if you'd like to know more.
There's a lot of feedback.
So that's a little history on it and what it looks like. So let's take this PE-PG apart a little bit, and I'll remind you, you've seen this before as well. So PE, that's the performance evaluation. That's the evaluation side of the system. And so it's not out of the question and not unusual to have an employer evaluate their employees and see if they're meeting the expectations. So in our system, we certainly are doing that. To meet the obligations in the law, we had to look at two pieces in evaluating our teachers. One was the instructional and professional practices, and the other was the student growth measures. Okay? And together that brought the summative rating in a holistic way. So this is the instructional model that we use. This is Marzano that you've heard about, the Marzano focused teacher evaluation model. And we started 4 years ago with a Marzano model that didn't look like this. And it has shifted, and it's been revised, and it's better. The teachers actually, when they saw it, and we were trying to make a decision if we were going to shift and when we were going to shift, they said, we like this better, the way this is organized better. So we shifted a little faster than we thought we would. We're in our second year of using this format of the framework. And basically, think of it as the teacher's curriculum. So we have curriculum for students, and we have a curriculum for our teachers. And it guides them in knowing what the expectations are. And that, Jenna, is where we do a lot of the PD, and right now we're, like I said, we're ramping it up. So we want to make sure that everybody has a common understanding of what these elements mean. Because on first glance, you might say, oh, I'm previewing new content. That's pretty self-explanatory. But when you go into what the research talks about best practices on previewing new content, we want our teachers to have at least that common language, a common understanding of what that is, so that when Mr. Davis goes in and is going to give feedback, everybody knows. So right now it's a little less on the customized, but it will move in that direction. Now, as I've inferred, we have not, there are 23 elements on that map, and we have rolled those out incrementally. So teachers are not being evaluated last year nor this year on all 23 elements yet. Next year, all 23 elements will be evaluated. We've been bringing on for training each year a certain number. So for example, this year, I just wrote it down, this year they're being evaluated on 14 of the 23, and they are having training on 10. And next year, those 10 will come on. Okay, because the 24, forget my math. I must have missed one. Let's say 13 and 10.
And are those decided by the steering committee? Do they have input on that?
Yes, there's been some input on that. The way I say yes with a little hesitation. What happened in this case was last year we looked at the elements that we were using from the old framework, and we did a crosswalk, and we said, where are those elements in the new framework? Let's start with those, because we know everybody has had training on it, and we're bringing on a new framework, so let's just start with those elements. So we said, is that a good idea? And the steering committee said, yes, that makes sense to start with.
So they're working right now on their first phase is actually phase 1 and 2 then, according to the original list. I have the original list. You had like 4 sections that you're going to start out with. Mm-hmm. And so 3 is 1. 3 targets is the first section, and then 10 targets is the next. So they're making 13. And so this year they're working on the 13 targets and will be evaluated on that.
Yes. So, and they're not all, we're not doing it linearly.
Okay.
We're pulling them from we call each of the sections are called domains. And so, for example, this year there's 1 in the standards-based planning domain.
Yeah.
All right, and then we've pulled 5 this year from the standards-based instruction. Then when you go to conditions for learning, there's, I think, 5 there, and then 2 in the professional responsibilities domain.
But this is the revised part,
Right,
right?
it's not the
So
same.
do you have the revised part that you're looking
Yeah,
at? Or
yes.
is that
Yep.
not the original?
Yeah, no.
The original was 16 elements.
Yeah, right, because it was way more. So the next year, they will be working on, they will have already gone through these 13 targets. So next year, they're working on the next battery of 10 targets.
They'll be evaluated on all of the elements next year.
Yeah.
And then
They're
they'll
being
be trained for
trained on-
those, plus evaluated on all of them. Okay. Is that kind of, is it too rigorous, or is it what
too
they,
rigorous?
do they recommend that kind of speed on?
I honestly think that this year we are approaching it, at a decent pace. A lot of the elements, previewing new content, a lot of the elements aren't going to take a ton of time to dive deeper in, but it will take time to unpack with staff, and they're doing a lot of these things already, And just to review is when we first rolled this out, we started with a lot of the elements that we knew that teachers could tackle, be really successful in,
That's
you know,
a good place to
setting
start.
up classroom expectations and rules and procedures, or acknowledging students' adherence to the, you know, et cetera. So we're rolling it on our agenda in the next couple of weeks is to roll out elements 5 through 8 for the teachers, and then we're halfway there through our yearly expectation for the.
So I did check, it's 14 this year and 9 training, so there's the math.
14 and 9, okay.
But, so Alfreda, this framework, the research is based on implementation of the framework as a whole, not in part.
Right.
So we're not to the point where we can say we're implementing with fidelity yet.
Well, it's a lot, it's a lot
Right.
to take in.
But we will be next year.
Yes,
Right.
we will be next year.
So it will be totally implemented next year.
Right. So if you were in Florida when they brought on this framework, it would have been, well, actually, it was the 60 elements. You would have been evaluated on all 60 year 1.
That's a lot.
So what we did, and it's perfectly fine to do, was to take that take that approach in a different manner.
Yeah, I
More
believe in breaking it
incremental.
down. I mean, they've got, I'm thinking as a teacher and having to deal with all of these targets, and then you've got your students' targets, and you've got two things going. So I'm
There's
looking
been
at
a lot.
how, it is a lot. And I'm thinking in terms of, you know, how do they go through all of that and survive it and be able to both learn as teachers and also learn for their learners, you know, their students. And are they, you know, I'd be interested in asking some questions about how it's going in terms of the, you know, the teacher recommendations or comments on how it's going and what's good and what's hard, and I just, you know, just to be realistic, that's all. I mean, I'm not saying this is not good, I'm just saying it would be good to see how it's working out and is it working for
Feel free.
our teachers.
And have a change of class from one level to the next, right?
Yeah, that's proper.
There's nothing static in teaching, that's for
Do you
sure.
want them to comment?
Sure, absolutely.
No moss is growing under the rocks.
Right.
Pull the mic, pull the mic.
Right?
Yeah.
The impact,
I would
what's
just
the impact,
say,
the
like-
overall impact in the course of a year, a teacher's life and students' lives, you know, so what does that look like?
I would just sort of piggyback on what Mike said. The way that it has been broken down for us has made it easier to sort of
Good.
digest everything that we're responsible for our evaluations. Like he said, the stuff we did last year, we were already sort of doing. And I know this year is more instructional practices, so I think it might be a little harder to unpack those, but we have been given the luxury of time, and it has been rolled out slowly for us, so I think it has been easier for us to sort of take it all in and figure out what we need to do in terms of our evaluation.
I think for me, it's been helpful to have other staff members who have been training us along the way. We're going to talk about a little bit later about the impact that peers have on our PDCAs. So just having other people who are in our shoes and know what we're going through has been really helpful, because we can kind of talk to them, see what's going well. They can take their information back to the steering committee and they can make adjustments from there. So I think that's been the most helpful and one of the easiest parts of this transition.
And I would say also the teachers, they're working really hard every day in their classroom. And one of the biggest differences I've noticed on my end is learning is becoming more and more transparent through this whole process and this whole framework. You know, one of the elements talks about, you know, identifying critical content, and if we've unpacked that, now we can go into classrooms and we're really seeing that. There's more commonality. I think it's really bringing our instruction in the district really, it's really bringing it to another level and really making it really clear for students, but also very clear for staff members at the same time. So it's kind of a dual edge.
Deanna, you were in
Thank you.
another evaluation system at one point, in a different district.
Yes. I think that might also be why I have appreciated the slow rollout, because we did not have that in my other district. It was sort of like, this is the evaluation system. You're expected to do all of it right out the gate. So this has been very nice to be able to really get into elements and really be able to understand what they are before being evaluated on them.
I think that's the difference maybe in the past, that the evaluation system wasn't tied in with the professional growth system. And this is tied in together. That if we were just implementing this as an evaluation system, we would have done that. We would have had that approach and said, here's what you're going to be evaluated on. But that's not what this is about. This is about that first part that we talked about. What does the research say, right? The research says these practices in the classroom, implemented, every classroom, to high degree, you're going to see results with your students. So we're going after a deeper understanding than just, here's your evaluation system, right? So, other questions for?
And there's research.
It's research-based. This is a research-based. And yes, I think somebody asked me before the meeting, so, you know, how much do we pay Dr. Marzano for this? Actually, we don't pay Dr. Marzano to use his framework. That needs to be clarified. We don't pay him directly a dime. And that's only fair to say it that way. What we do pay for, and you need to know it's in the budget, is for a platform to house this information that's being passed between Mike and his teachers. So when he goes in and does an observation, there's a lot of data. It's not simply a written evaluation or observation like in the past. It's pretty comprehensive, it's pretty objective, and there's information that goes back and forth between the teacher and the evaluator.
So we're paying for the platform.
Paying for the platform.
Platform too.
If you think of it as an app,
So we're paying for the app.
that's really, we're
We're
paying.
licensed
That's
paying
right.
for the license of the app.
When you hear eye observation,
That's what it is.
that's what we're paying.
That's what we're paying for. It's not paying Dr. Marzano. I mean, Dr. Marzano and eye observation, I'm sure, have a relationship. I don't want you to think that I'm naive on that. But we're after that platform and helping us be more efficient for our evaluators to communicate clearly and effectively to the teachers.
And I think a comment by both of you on that platform, how effective it is, how do you use it, what are its strengths and perhaps its weaknesses. You know, it's because it's a new platform, it's a new way of communication, new way of talking between staff and administration.
Want to start on your end before I give my perspective?
I appreciate the eye observation because it's very concrete, and it gives you, here's your standard, what you need to be able to do, and then it gives you some examples of what good practice looks like for meeting that. And it's very clear cut, you know exactly what you need to do, and if Mr. Davis comes in and he checks off, you did all these great things, but these are some areas that you have some improvement. So it's very helpful in that sense. It gives you an idea of where you need to go as an educator.
And it generates really specific conversation between teacher and evaluator that's very specific about the elements, about your instruction. So that makes, you know, after the evaluation, the meetings that we have much more meaningful.
Now, before we get there, you didn't have this before, correct? There was no mechanism, there was no standard type communication. It was kind of off the cuff a little bit. And so this is an improvement in that and helps you in your profession. Is it a
Yeah, I
good
mean, I remember my
characterization?
first evaluation had things like how I decorated my bulletin board and what I wore for clothes, and this is more meaningful because it has to do with my instruction and how I'm, you know, how I'm directly affecting my students.
So it's less subjective.
What's that?
It's less subjective.
Yes.
On it.
Yeah.
It has concrete things for you to work on or to get an applaud for.
Absolutely. And I would say on the principal end, the shift has become, it used to be when I first started, we would do walkthroughs and we could do our own format, whether it's a little parking lot, leave a lift, leave some comments, leave a this, that. What I've noticed, and it's been really helpful for me as this is my 6th year in administration and I'm learning every day, is, going into the classroom, my forte might not be literacy like Dr. Doris, but if it were my forte prior to this model, I might always have a tendency to focus through a specific lens. This allows me to look at instruction, what is good teaching, what are the students learning, are they learning, and that framework to go take it back to improvement. So for me as an administrator, this has been a huge help. And if you ever get a chance to see the framework and the details of it, there are boxes and there are check marks. But as I tell my staff, it's not an exhaustive checklist. And actually, I try not to. I put as much thought into the comments and into the written feedback in addition to, because there's so much that happens in the classroom. And I also tell them I'm not going to capture everything in one walkthrough in your classroom.
So are they able to come back and say, Mr. Davis, you didn't see that exactly right?
We're encouraged to come back and do that. A lot of times he'll see 3/4 of a lesson. He won't see how
Right,
it was
right.
wrapped up, or if we did some sort of assessment at the end of it. So we can either write about that, or we can go show him what we have, and that can be added to that.
Yeah, you can attach it
particular-
right there,
Yep.
right, for him to see.
So you can attach it, and if I said, oh, you're developing on this, and there's evidence, we go, oh my gosh, actually, you're right. I missed that. You are applying. Thank you for bringing that to my attention, because you're right. We're not going to see everything every time.
So you have this platform, and it's a good communication between both, because it's a two-way street, really, isn't it?
Yes.
But doesn't it provide other resources for you?
Yeah, I think we're going to talk about that too, go ahead,
Yes.
go.
Yes, it's going to connect to what we're going to talk about in a few minutes with the plan, do, check, and adjust system that we have. But I know that on iObservation, you can go in, there's other resources that you can find from other schools that have used this model before, and what are some evidence that they've pulled that is meeting that expectation of that particular domain.
There are video clips in there for teachers to use. There are what we call the white papers, so it's more explicit information from the researchers, from, in this case, Dr. Marzano, about what is behind that element to help them have a better understanding.
Are you also able to create your own resource and put it there for other teachers to look at?
I think so. I don't think that platform allows for that.
I think it has to
Empowered
be
it.
vetted.
I was going to say, I thought about
We have been doing that.
Yes.
Using Padlet and stuff. They've done things where, what are you doing to capture student learning? And they will put up it on a Padlet, and then they can all see the Padlet and click on things and see teachers. Yes.
That would certainly be something for the steering committee to look at. Once we get this rolled out, what's some way, a platform, either can iObservation develop in that way, or can we develop something else to use internally? Yeah, Pat.
I've asked this before, and I'm going to ask it again just to get it out there. Having started with this in 2013 through the 16, as a support staff member, a lot of the elements didn't apply, and we had a lot of difficulty with our evaluation. So I'm wondering what you're doing about that, because we still work under teacher contract.
So, two ways to answer that. One, the law doesn't recognize some of the support staff, like a librarian. This is talking about, the law talks about the requirement for teachers who have direct instruction responsibility.
Okay.
But that aside, because we want all of our staff to be highly effective, there are other research models that we have looked into. So I'll talk about librarians because it's near and dear to your heart. We're using we looked at and are looking at the Danielson model. It's very similar. It's based on the same body of research, but it's looked at through the lens of a librarian. Guidance counselors, same things. We looked at Danielson's model for that. Now, our instructional coaches, Marzano came up with a framework for non-classroom support staff.
Yeah, I'd seen that, but it wasn't.
It still wasn't right. We tried to look at that for librarians. So we went with Danielson, and they've tied it to the national standards for librarians and
good.
for guidance counselors.
Excellent, yeah.
So it's very familiar language for our guidance counselors, very familiar language for our librarians.
That's good to hear.
Yep. Great. Shall we move on?
Yep.
Okay. Second part, we did PE, PG, and that's where we're going to hear real time. We've been like 10,000 feet. We're going to come down to like 3,000 to 5,000 feet, and what's it like for our teachers to experience the PE, PG system. But the professional growth end of our system is focused, as we've talked about, focused on professional development, feedback from peers and evaluators. I think we're going to hear some more about that. And every teacher has a professional growth plan that they develop, and they are continuously using throughout the year to guide their growth and their development and application in the classroom. So, without further ado, I'll pass it on to you all.
Perfect. So one of our platforms for capturing out the work that we do at the building level and at the classroom level is through what's called the PDCA, and you heard Laura mention that before. That it's plan, do, check, and adjust. That's, basically that is a document where we do our goal setting. I do my goal setting for the building, which then there's a trickle down to the teachers who also use the same form, and we go through the same process, and they're going to talk about the process in just a moment. But really, we go back to there are two goals. Our goals as educators, right, was to increase student achievement. That's a priority, and also to increase teacher effectiveness. So hand in hand, we look at our data sets, multiple. Maybe it's last year's performance. Maybe it's the fall universal screening. Maybe it's the MEAs. Whatever the data sets we're using. We comb through those and we come up with some very specific measurable goals that we can say, okay, here's something I'm noticing and we're going to tackle as a staff or in the classroom. And so we set our goals through that. The one thing I would say through this process, and much like goal setting in the past, this PDCA process has taken a shift. We used to, years ago, back when I was in the classroom, we'd do a PDCA, we'd set our goals for the whole year, and then we would, probably not come back to it until June, and go, oh yay, well, I said I was going to do that, oh darn, well, I guess I didn't meet my goal, or I'll look at it again next year. What we've done now is made a shift to say to the teachers, and they can speak more to this, is keep it short term, and drill down, okay, in the next 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, what's your data saying? What is it that you hope that you can actually focus in on, and try not to take on too much, right, Mrs. Grondin? Right?
Yes, Mr. Davis.
We all have to, we have to ask ourselves the 5 whys, because we're doing 100 million things every day, but what are the 2 or 3 things that you can make a difference in the classroom or as a school that's going to have an impact on both of those things that I said, student achievement and teacher effectiveness. So I'm going to turn it over to these folks so they can tell you how they develop, and then I will actually pull yours up.
Are you going to
right?
talk about how you developed the first goal?
Oh, and so on all of our teacher PDCAs, thank you, is because we're a Title I school, we have Title I goals. And so naturally we have a school-wide goal percentage. Our goal is to get 72% of this, or whatever our goals happens to be. That's across the board. So then teachers go, okay, that's our school goal. Here's what my data is telling me. Now what do I need to do, or what can I do in the classroom to help support that goal in our district, in our building progress?
Perfect. So the first thing that we do is we look at the student data. So that data can come in a whole bunch of different forms, whether it be the universal screening in the fall, or even go back to the spring before to see where students are at. And then also like writing prompts and fluency when we do running records with them, and really identify first of all where the students are strong in, but then take a look and see where are some of the students' areas of improvement. As a group, whether it be a small portion of students that you choose or your whole class, where is they struggling? And what can you do, what can we do to help get them, close that gap for them? These goals are connected to student needs first off, okay? And sometimes there's so much student need that one of the tough parts is narrowing it down to what's actually important for the students at that point. And because it is a working document, what may be important in the fall may not be as important in the spring because they have mastered that. So with the working document of the PDCA, you can go back and make those adjustments as you go. Essentially, when we start it, we also want to look at what is the best practice for our teachers to implement for the students. We want them to be successful. So what do we need to do as teachers in order to do that? Where do we start?
All right, so That part of the process is the plan part. So after we sort of sift through our data and figure out where the needs are, we have to figure out as teachers what we are going to do in the classroom to help meet those goals. So when we're writing, you know, that part of the plan, we're kind of thinking about what am I going to do during my instructional time to make sure that I'm focused on those goals and helping my students get to where they need to be. So I'm using my data, and like I know Mike has said it a couple of times, but using our student data to help reach an overall school goal. So that's the plan part. You kind of plan out what you're going to do in your classroom. The do part is what instructional strategies are you going to use, again, to help you with your plan to meet the goal. So it could be, you know, how are you going to monitor data? What are you doing? Like I know in my classroom this year, I'm trying to meet the needs of a lot of different learning levels. So I'm specifically differentiating my learning centers to meet the needs of 17 different kids. So that's something, that is an instructional strategy that I'm using to meet my goals. And then as we keep working, you know, we use this document, and I know we've all said it, I mean, it really has to be a living document. It has to be something that you want to go back to, something that is really helpful for you as a teacher, to kind of, you know, okay, this is the date I set, and I did it, so check. Now what can I do now that I've met that goal, now that I've crossed that off of my list? And then the next part would be the monitoring the growth and when we will monitor that, and I think Laura's going to talk about that.
So my favorite part, and I think Mr. Davis would probably agree, is the reflection part of this. Yeah. Is going back and looking at, sorry. It's
That's
really
her
long.
reflection.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry. So
Overachiever on the reflection.
Yeah.
So we want our kids to be reflective and take ownership of their learning. So I kind of take that same philosophy and put it into my PDCA and say, okay, what parts are going well? What have I accomplished? And if I've accomplished that, let's get rid of it. We move on, put something else in there that the kids are struggling with. And then look at what are some other options if it's not going well for them. Is it I need to adjust the format of my lessons, or is it I need to work with students more independently on their task to help them reach those goals? And once they've done that, make those adjustments. And we evaluate them in different ways. It could be back to the universal screening. It could be one-on-one interactions with the students, student work samples, to get an idea of where they are, how they've progressed, and where we need to go from there.
Do you want to add anything else before we talk about PDCA buddies
I
stuff?
think you're good to go.
Okay,
You're doing great.
so another aspect of the PDCA is what we call PDCA buddies. It's like a peer reflection. So once a month we get together with one other teacher that is in the same grade or a similar grade as you, and you just meet and you talk about the goals you've met, things that have been working, things that you need to change. You share student data, talk about how you can regroup things in your classroom to make sure your students are being successful. And it's really just a time to talk to somebody who is in, you know, the same sort of situation with you, you know, really working every day to get their kids, you know, to make their kids more successful. It's a really meaningful conversation that really helps, you know, what we're doing and what's reflected in our PDCAs.
Do you ever have the opportunity to talk with someone that's not in your school? So across the district?
So I was a pre-K teacher here for 3 years, and we, as pre-K teachers, have the luxury of time, and we can meet on Wednesdays, and we did do a lot of PDCA work together, and we were constantly, you know, talking about what goals we met and what we could change, and that was really meaningful. I wish I could say that we had the same amount of time for every grade level, but this time that we do have, I mean, it is helpful and it is effective. I wish we had more time to meet with other grade levels, other schools, and see what they're doing.
Not for PDCA work, other professional development,
Right.
we do cross levels across the district, but not for PDCA work.
Not specifically for
Yeah.
PDCA, right.
That's a good question.
Yeah, that's good, make me think.
Yeah.
So when we take these PDCAs, it's oftentimes linked to the eye observation that we were just talking to. So my professional goal, I took this information, the goal set, and took it directly from eye observation. So I looked at it and said, okay, where is one of my areas of weaknesses, going back to what Mr. Davis had evaluated last year, and said, okay, what do I need to improve on this year? And so I also based my goal on what my students need. So I do a lot of science and social studies, so a lot of those similarities and differences, which is part of the eye observation, was a weakness for them. And I noticed that right off, and I said, well, in order to improve their skills, they need to be able to do that. So I looked at what sorts of things, and I took those overall desired effects directly from Marzano. So I know that that's where I need to cover, and then came up with the instructional strategies from there.
And I encourage my staff, when they're creating their professional goals, to really look at a previous year's performance, so that because they would have already reflected upon it at the end of the year, but go back to what are the things you said at the end of last year that you know going into this year that there's something that you are going to want to be working on, much it's the same way we as administrators develop our goals. So tying it back to the work we've done through teacher evaluation.
So if you went to a different school to teach, would your goals go with you?
At a different school in Auburn or a different district?
Auburn.
They would go with me, yep.
Okay.
And then they may adjust, right, depending
course.
on the needs of the students.
And I guess what I was getting at is that I wanted to be sure that you would fit in another school that was, your work would.
Right. So
All right.
again, we'd have to look at what is the student need based on that and
Right.
make the adjustments appropriately.
But
based
the
on
teacher curriculum is the same, I think is where you're going,
That's
Bonnie,
where I'm going with
right?
it, Michelle.
So yeah, we would definitely look at the student needs first through the lens of the student needs, but the curriculum is the same in all of our schools.
And I think your professional goal would probably be the same no matter what school you were at. You know, it's something that
Right.
you feel like, or through your evaluations have been noted that you need to be working on.
Yeah, the
So-
top part of that PDCA, which is student growth, certainly would be different because you're going to have a different data
Right.
set there, but the bottom half of the PDCA very well could be transferred.
Thank you.
Good question.
A piggyback question about the student growth. How do you monitor that student growth? How do you do that? And do you also, it's a double question, do you go back and review and dipstick and just make sure that they still remember those particular skills and are not forgetting it? How do you do that?
If I'm looking at my PDCA, I have a number of different ways that I'm monitoring growth. For kindergarten, we take the STAR test, and I'm using that. I'm using my data points from the fall, the winter, and then also doing progress monitoring. So I'll see where they are at different points in the year, and that will obviously help to, drive my instruction and see how I need to change things in my classroom.
So just going back up a little bit higher than the granular level, one of the elements here talks about providing feedback, using formative assessment to track progress.
Okay.
So they're going to receive feedback from Mr. Davis about their ability to do that against that scale that is in eye observation. So that is something that is critical for
Okay.
instruction,
Right.
and it's reflected in research, so.
Are there times when, this is very tightly planned and it's very obvious, and I'm thinking back in my head what I've gone through myself in my own profession, and, I do like, what I'm seeing, but sometimes things don't always go the way they're supposed to go. What do you do to plan for, are there allowances for things that don't go the regular, by the rule, or
Yeah,
what do
and
you do in those cases?
I definitely think that that's something that I appreciate about this. I know Michelle mentioned that I worked in another district, and then in the other district, we also had a plan that was similar to this, but it was, you set your goals in the fall, and you open them back up in June, and there's no changing, there's no tweaking, there's no strike-throughs, and we're encouraged to do all of those things, because we know that things don't always go as planned. So if we, if we have a date on here and we don't get to our goal by then, we can change that. And then there's a spot on here where we can do a reflection about why, why we had to change it or why that goal wasn't met and what we can do differently to make sure that we're, sticking to the dates that we set for ourselves.
So as a teacher, you have the, you have the authority to do that, and then who checks on that to make sure that's going well?
I would say it's a mixture of
Yeah.
both us and our end of the trimester reflections that we have to do. It's a good check-in for Mr. Davis to see how well we're progressing along that. But I think I check mine quite frequently to make sure that, I'm meeting those dates. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. You can always adjust. That's the
Yeah,
beauty of it.
dates are always, you have to have the dates, but you really, it's
Exactly.
not, you would be human if you couldn't, if you didn't hit all of those dates, it's not a problem.
The one thing I would say is really, and they've kind of hit on this, is we want this is about them and their students. And so, and I'm there as a resource to help support and guide and help focus, versus saying, okay, we're all going to do this and we're all going to do this. And, this is it's differentiated. Everybody has their own. We just had a staff meeting last week where we may, as a result of that, after looking at some further data, saying, okay, as a staff, we're all going to commit to this. So at times there will be commonalities across the board. So there are some things coming for that. But as of right now, they all look very, very different, and it's really their document to use and whatever format that makes sense for them. So we, as administrators across the district, just work really closely at helping drill down the focus.
And we're all working on the Marzano elements, but in our own way. Like we're all meeting those elements the way we, the way that is most effective
You're
for
the
us and our
spokes
students.
to that whole wheel, and that's what it is. I mean, I like the idea that, you know what role you play as a school. You have your goal, your overarching goals, but you know what roles you play into that, and you will know what the impact is. And how do you know? The big question I would ask is the Marzano model working and showing improvement in you as a teacher and in your students?
I think it's just making us more intentional.
Yeah.
That's making
Intentional
our
instruction.
instruction more intentional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What happens with, sometimes there are challenges in terms of behaviors, student behaviors. And so how do you handle that? Is there something within the system that allows you to handle that? That is another whole can of worms, so to speak.
I would say, again, going 10,000 feet again.
Yeah.
The conditions for learning side of this is all instruction. So these two domains you can see them in the classroom. These two
Right.
domains are not in the classroom. So that's why I point to these a lot. Conditions for learning talked about that. Classroom management, what's going on to address those inefficiencies, we call them, in the classroom that get in the way of instruction, right? So
Right.
behavior you're referring to would
Definitely.
be
Yeah.
addressed in there. Engagement strategies would be addressed in that area as well. Knowing students, creating positive relationships with all students, setting high expectations for all students. Those are the types of things that are in conditions for learning.
Because we know special ed students being in the mainstream as much as possible is important, but it also can be disruptive. And then so, you want to keep things going. You want everybody to achieve and not be disrupted. So if it gets to the point where it's really, what do you do if it gets to the point where it's definitely disrupting your instruction and you just can't go any further? Is there an allowance for that? Yeah.
So I know two more
Go ahead,
questions, and we're like 2 minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry. What happens, you have a school goal and you have individual goals. What happens if you don't meet them? Tell us what happens. If, for example, 72% don't do A, B, or C, what do you do then as a staff?
So one of the things we do, I know we're almost out of time, but throughout the year, we know where we've set the goal. And so we know what our fall data is saying. We deploy some instructional strategies. We progress monitor. We look at the data. Are we making progress? If we're not, what do we need to do? What does this cohort of kids do? Our goal is, honestly, we like to be able to meet all of our goals all the time. Are there times where we don't? Yes. But what that does, it just gets us to ask ourselves more questions, to look deeper. What are the needs of the students? And that's what they're doing on a day-to-day basis in the classroom. And through our universal screening, fall, winter, and spring, we have multiple opportunities and multiple checkpoints to say, okay, where are we on track? And that's just one assessment that would help us inform towards the goal. But
So you
Guidance.
you can actually change your PDCA too as the year goes on, correct?
yes, right, change your, right, and that's why we try to, on this you see a lot of other dates, but we try to keep them really short-term focused, so you can say, okay, I need to adjust that desired effect to something else because that's not working. They can do that.
So the time frame in your reflection, how long does it take you to reflect and put it down?
Depends on if you're doing
Depends on the individual.
Yeah. Laura takes longer than I do.
Yeah, I take much longer. I'm a little bit wordier, and I'm very critical about it. Like, I'm going to nitpick everything that I do to make sure, can I adjust that? Is that good? And see what I can do. Like, I'm very critical of it, so mine tends to be much longer than probably other staff members.
I tell staff this is not for college credit when they're doing their reflection. We want them to be fully reflective. What you're seeing tonight, actually, two of our elements here are being demonstrated tonight. One of them is the reflective piece here, the maintaining expertise in content and pedagogy. I don't want to miss that. And then promoting teacher leadership. We have good examples of this right here. That's right here on the framework. But yeah,
And I just want one more comment. Teacher leadership, teacher time, teacher dedication. I sense a real good dedication from you two. And I know we have many more teachers that do that. But you talk so freely about this that I'm like, oh my God, really good, very good. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
thank you. They're worth our investment, eh?
There it is.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing your plans, because that takes a risk, and
You did.
appreciate it.
Very well. Thank you again. Appreciate your time.
Thank
Especially
you.
late hour. Go home.
Oh, it's cold in here.
5 minutes? Good. We'll get 5 minutes break, and we'll,
Your name, please.
You want to?
Change my hat.
I don't know.
Oh,
Oh, it must be the students.
yeah, it's a new season.
Right.
Alfreda, you need your sign.
We're on air.
Yeah, all right.
We're on air.
We've just commenced this. Welcome, everyone, to this Auburn School Committee meeting while Katie does the setup. This, jack of all trades.
Master of them all.
Yeah, master of, wait a minute, master of none, jack of all. And as soon as she gets close enough, we'll have everyone join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, if you would, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Where is it?
Introductions. We're going to start over there.
Thank you.
Yara Fournier, student rep. Olivia Ross, student rep.
Bring that mic nice and close, particularly when you're going to give your report. There you go.
Right up close.
Adam Hansen, business manager.
Michelle, bring that close to you when you
Yeah, I
speak.
know it. We got it.
All set. Alfreda Fournier, Ward 4, Mayor's rep.
And Poisson, Ward 5.
Pat Gaudier at large.
Katie Grondin, sit in over here. Yeah, she's here. Tom Kendall, Ward 3.
Bonnie Hayes, Ward 2.
Jenna Scrivener, Ward 4.
Bob Neely, Ward 1.
Very good. Communications. Has anyone? Okay, Katie's got something to say, and I know Bonnie's got something to say. So
Bonnie, go
we'll let
first.
Bonnie start. Yes.
Okay. On October 25th, 24th, 25th, and 26th, Tom and I and Katie and Adam and Michelle had the pleasure of going to the MSMA conference on it. Wednesday, Tom and I did the whole afternoon on superintendent board relations with the chair and the vice chair. Very interesting, very informative. The next day, we had seminars, and we all chose different seminars, mostly that we went to help us in our task here. Very interesting. And then I had the pleasure of being a delegate to the conference. It is in a huge room, very, very, it's not personal at all on it. It's just a big room, and you flash a number up, you flash your paper up for a vote, and we had gone over the proposed resolutions that were proposed for us, and there was some chit-chat among the delegates. We voted, and I have to say we did a good job. We voted according to what most systems voted for, so it was good. We did not vote against the resolution for performance, the diploma. Okay, there was some controversy here on it. I voted according to my notes, so I voted in favor of it, as we had discussed on it. The one that I found most interesting, the resolution I found most interesting, was the extension of the school year and the cost to the districts. And we're a big district, and it cost us money, and we probably can figure out how to absorb it in the cost. Right, Adam? We can figure it out. But some of the smaller districts were really having a hard time with this, and the discussion went on forever on it. All of this, all of the discussion, all of the resolutions are used to go back to the lobbyist, to go back to the legislators, to lobby for money, to support these programs and to support the programs in themselves on it. It was very interesting, and I have to commend you all for giving me the good information to vote on. So thank you.
Good. And I the conference, which I have attended, and Bonnie has attended, and other members of the school committee at different times of the year, is a very useful conference. There's a tremendous amount of information that is shared. It's exciting with the information that you receive, whether it be for how to negotiate or how to lead schools or how to govern or how to, I mean, all sorts of topics that really inform our service here on the board. So I encourage each and every one to consider attending in another year. So, all right, Katie.
Yeah, what was interesting is the things that we deal with in Auburn is across the state. So how we face public participation a little bit over the year, of having people come and talk for, an hour and a half or so forth, or bring up issues that aren't on the agenda, and then how do you respond in a way that people feel heard, but then you can't respond. What's interesting is there were a lot of sessions on that. There were a lot of sessions on how do you handle public participation. So it's not, whenever we go to these conferences, you can tell what the hot topics are, because those are what most of the sessions are about. So I know a couple of us attended those. So as we think about maybe looking at public participation, what are the pros and cons of how you run them, when you run them, how you organize them. It was very insightful about how people do it in different ways. One, what's appropriate, what's those type of things. So there are things that when we talk to our attorney, Peter Femley, who is most of the attorneys that represent schools give a lot of sessions. Like I went to a public participation by a Drummond Woodsum attorney, not ours. They obviously look through the lens of law around public participation. So Peter Femley said if that was a topic we would like to talk more about as a board around that policy of, we certainly can. So I just want, that would seem to be one that, this is one that's become a concern around the state. So you always pick up on teacher negotiations. How to negotiate is always one that pops up a lot. I'm trying to think what other ones we all went to, but
there were a lot of
those were big ones,
negotiations.
a lot of negotiations
that we went to on it. But in following what you're just saying is that we need to look at our policy for public participation. Yeah. We need to review it and to go from there on it.
Because there's some good advice.
And also it was always Robert's Rules of Order that they used, that suggested to be used.
So, and I'm communicating for Tom on this a little bit, is during the conference, Tom connected with the Lewiston School Committee chair, and so Bill Webster and I have been talking about a joint meeting. We have in our policies around meeting often, once a year, and we haven't really done that. We've met twice since Bill was superintendent and I was superintendent. So we are planning a joint meeting on January 7th. It's a Monday. At the Green Ladle, we will have dinner there.
What day?
I hope Rob knows. Rob probably already knows. January 7th.
January.
Yes.
January 7th. Did I say June?
No, you were fine.
Okay, thank you. Sometimes I would come, yeah. All right, so January 7th on Monday, at Green Ladle, and I don't think we've set the time necessarily, but I'm going to guess it's probably 6 if we're doing dinner, but I'll send you everything. What they have on their list tentatively is to talk about CTE programming, which Rob is going to talk about in a little bit, and they might want to share their STEM. They've hired a STEM teacher, science, technology, engineering, math. Teacher for each of their schools. So they have a teacher that works at each of the school about STEM, and they thought they might share that. And then, so there were the CT, the STEM, and then they might want to share the superintendent search for the Lewiston superintendent, where they are in that process. So if there's something you particularly feel proud about that you would like us to share, we haven't talked about it as an administrative team around what we think would be a valuable thing, but if there's something particular that you all would like us to share with them, we can do that. So be thinking. We don't have to make a decision. I just want you to have it in your date book at January 7th.
Anything else?
That's It?
That's good. Anyone else? Chair? Yes, or Elfrida?
I just have one communication I got from a constituent who, I believe she called, the principal had a concern about dropping off her children in kindergarten and at the rate of speed. It was at Fairview School. And there was the cars are going 45 miles an hour, you know, and this is while a crossing guard is there. This is while students are coming, trying to cross the street either way. And, you know, the traffic, we've talked about this at the city council quite a bit, and we've talked about it with the police. The police are very good. And I called, when she called me that day, I immediately called, and there was police presence there that day for dismissal, because I found out about it at the end of the morning. And there's supposed to be signage put up. I don't know if that's going to help anything, but, you know, I felt that if they put a sign up at the upper part when you're crossing Fairview and you've got Clover Manor on the right and you're going up towards the hill, that's where they start to pick up speed. But they also pick up speed at the other, from the other angle, because they're coming off the turnpike, so to speak. So the whole city has problems with speed, you know, traffic speed. And so the mom was really concerned because one car in particular was weaving in and out, and had they woven just at the wrong time, they would have hit the crossing guard. So I did report that, and so I don't know if you're hearing similar concerns at other schools. I would think that probably it's certain schools, you know, are in the stream of traffic. Those would be the ones probably.
I mean, Minot Avenue, if they're talking about Minot Avenue, has
Yes.
it has the blinking light to drop to 15 miles per hour at either end of that. Now, does that mean people go 15 miles? So
don't.
I do know, when I go by there at that time, they are blinking and people are coming down. So I don't know if it was the blinking, you know, is it
It was in the morning at 8:10, 8:15.
8:10? So it should still be on blinking, but it was good that you let the police department know, because I know they sometimes surf that to make sure to bring the speed down. Right.
They went for dismissals to make sure that they could
And our
cover that.
crossing guards are good that they communicate with Adam if they're, you know, when they had a lot of construction, we had to talk about the construction and the crossing and so forth. So I think you're right, though, speed. Don't pull off when a red light turns green. I've learned that lesson. You just stand there, you wait, did everyone stop, and then you go. But I agree with you. I've
We've
learned,
got
don't pull
big
out.
trucks, yeah. So I think,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard from any of the other schools of concern from parents or anything, but that was the communication that I got from
Yep.
a parent.
Thank you.
Bob?
Yeah, I want to congratulate the Yale football team for beating Lewiston 2 weeks in a row, and Jillian Richardson for
Yes.
finishing third in the state cross-country meet in a
Yes.
very cold and dreary day.
Yes,
Absolutely.
absolutely,
And
absolutely.
I will send you, I don't know if you all have, you probably do, about when the drama play is performing, and do you have that information? What can you do? Okay, so I'll send you out, because the EL drama play is coming up. I think Auburn Middle School play is coming up, so there are some dates. I'll make sure you get those.
So, Elfrida, going back, you're our rep to the city council. Did you suggest, or did the city council suggest to the police department that they put a cruiser out there with a policeman in it for a period of time to deter it?
What we did is, you know, Interim Chief Moen was there, and we had the discussion with Interim Chief Moen, and he said that he's working on it, that he does have presence, you know, at those schools, particular schools, especially middle school has good coverage
Yeah,
usually.
yeah.
But it depends on what, as he said, it depends on what goes on at that time, what the issue at hand is. And
Understandable,
and
but
low.
just so that, you know, if it's a normal day, then it would be nice to have a police car by the fire station. Or something like that, so that we can, but also, it also needs to go through Adam, too, so be sure
So
that it's-
Adam is the one who's,
He does crossing guards.
that's nice
Yep.
to know.
In conjunction with the police department.
Yeah, they
In
talk.
conjunction with, okay.
Officer Cheney.
So I was shocked, I'm surprised if the crossing guard didn't say anything. The crossing guard never mentioned anything to anyone. Yeah.
And it's interesting because Minot Avenue has been under construction since May.
Oh, it's awful.
So it's, anybody
People are
that's speeding
impatient.
on that street with that construction is going to take out more than the crossing guide. It's going to take out the worker bees that are there.
Jenna?
I just kind of wanted to piggyback on Alfreda's comment. My biggest concern was voting
Oh, yes, I got feedback on that.
at the schools, and Fairview was awful. I almost watched a kid get hit out there, and the school told me that the police department was supposed to be involved in that, and I went down to the police department, and they're like, no, we're not involved, and I'm like, well, could you have a presence there this afternoon, because we need help.
Right.
They were gonna try to do that, but I wasn't there after school, so I have no idea, so we didn't
And
we didn't have any accidents, thank God.
And I had a communication again, why do they continue to be in the schools? So, I mean, it's an ongoing, and I think this was a high vote for a midterm, so.
Yeah.
There was a police presence there at about 11:30, 11:45, because I was voting at that time, and there was a police officer there.
But
For-
dismissal would have
For
been
what
more.
purpose?
Well, I don't know, he was there, though. Can't-
Yeah, they were rotating around.
Yeah,
They were
moving
trying
around,
to
so.
circle, but Fairview has a hard enough time dismissing on a regular day.
Okay.
Yes.
So, and I think what happened is there was a high voter presence at the same time. Sometimes there isn't, sometimes there is, and there
Right.
was. Yes, Celeste wrote to me and said, I just want you to know, it was quote-unquote horrific.
Yeah.
There was yelling, it was not pretty, from what I understand.
So why don't we be a little proactive? We've got 2020 coming, and we know it's going to be a big election. Maybe on 2020, it should be built into our calendar that it is a workshop day and not a student day.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, we have to work with our region to
Yeah,
see
our
about
region.
that day, and, yeah. It was suggested by a parent, why isn't it a workshop day? So,
That's a good
Makes
suggestion.
perfect sense.
My daughter called me that morning from Connecticut, and I said, what are you doing calling me at 8:45? We're closed, she said, because
So is
of...
Massachusetts.
Yep,
Yeah.
No school on both.
right.
So we definitely can do that.
Yeah, that's an easy fix.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good.
I guess in relation to that, if I can just jump in
You
a
may.
second, because I pick one up at Fairview too. She's older, so I'm down on Allen Park. But that new building that they're building next to, they're starting to level the ground, and they're starting, so I don't know how that's going to impact walkers and that kind
Traffic.
of stuff on that
point,
side
Pat.
of the street. So I would encourage more police presence, because I was going through my head, and I think that is the school that is on really a 4-lane road.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It is
About it,
4-lane.
so if we could encourage that, I think it would be good.
Instead of having the police up at the middle school more often, we've got the guy in the front that directs traffic, so we don't need a police car down on the hill going to Taylor Brook, necessarily. We need a police car on the 4-way street.
Yeah, 4 ways are the most
But we
dangerous.
can talk about it.
Yeah, put it on as a goal.
Yeah.
Noted.
Just noted.
Very good. Not something we don't know about.
We have some control and
Yep.
some non-control.
Consent agenda. That's the approval of tonight's agenda, approval of our minutes from our previous meeting on October 17th. Do I have a motion to
So
approve?
moved.
Second?
Second.
Any corrections or issues? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you very much. Moving on, public participation. Do we have anyone from the public that would care to share any comments concerning anything at this point? Seeing no one leaping, unless Leroy's about ready to come. No, all right, he's passing, he's taking a
Leroy has
pass.
jet lag.
All right.
Oh, come on.
We'll move on to student information, a student report here, and they look ready. I mean, they just look ready.
Wait, are you guys seniors this year?
They are.
We are.
Big deal.
Yeah. Okay, so
Get the mic right there.
And
You
you
gotta
get
bring
the
the
mic
mic right
real
there. That's
close
right.
to your mouth. People
Love that mic.
Caress it.
me and Olivia emailed the elementary schools.
Put it down.
Yeah, you gotta bring it down.
Oh,
There you go, there you go.
Sorry. Me and Olivia emailed the elementary schools, and we got 3 replies back. Fairview, their news was the civil rights team has been hosting brown bag lunch with students and guest speakers. Mr. Ben Hayes visited the group to discuss how the Civil Rights Act and disability rights allow him to do his job and participate in everyday activities. Next week, Robin Fleck and the cultural broker will be visiting the group to discuss cultural diversity in Auburn schools. And then on November 14th, Fairview will be recognized as a national champion school by Special Olympics. Fairview is one out of 3 schools in the state and the only elementary school to receive this award. Fairview met the 10 criteria for an exclusive school community. November 14th will also be the start with Hello Week, where the school will be continuing their work on building community as part of the Sandy Hook Promise Foundation. And then for Walton has been selected to represent Androscoggin County in the 2019 Kids Winter Games. 2 schools from each county will participate in 4 weeks of physical activity and nutrition challenges from January 7th through February 1st. The top 3 schools will win cash prizes. A gold medal is $5,000, bronze is $3,000, silver is $1,500, and Mr. Davis said stay tuned for more information about how you can support Walton. Sherwood Heights, they welcomed a well-known author, Matt Tavier. He shared his wonderful books and gave some tips on how to be a great writer and illustrator. Over the past several weeks, Sherwood CLC students have enjoyed participating in a variety of activities such as yoga, salsa making, gardening, schoolyard cleanup, and playing Frisbee. The Traveling Science Program presented Newton's Laws to Sherwood 3rd graders and will be presenting engineering, wind energy to our 4th graders this month, or their 4th graders this month. And then for AMS, basketball will be starting soon, and they have sign-ups in the office. That begins on November 13th. Alpine and Nordic sign-ups are also in the office, and that's going to be starting soon. And there was a parent meeting, I think a couple nights ago about that. There's also sign-ups for anybody interested, students, parents, and teachers. It said on the email that's interested in being an Odyssey of the Mind this year. And they're also having a clothing drive. So they're asking for gently used warm clothing. And then for EL, girls hockey started this Monday. Olivia's on the team.
Ooh, awesome.
Tuesday, November 13th, NHS, we're inducting our new members, so we'll have that. And then the following day, the 14th, CSA is doing their cultural Thanksgiving. That's from 5 to 8, I believe. And they encourage everyone to participate and bring food that represents your home and stuff you eat. And then there's obviously food and then some performances, and the cost is $4 per person. And then November 16th is Kitty Night. NHS is hosting that, and our proceeds go to a local charity. I'm not sure which one yet, and that's ages, well, pre-K and up. And then we're also doing the Eddie's 10,000 Strong, which we're looking for 10,000 items. So each student to bring 10 items, and we're trying to collect 10,000. Sunday, November 11th, they are doing, it's like a field day kind of. It's an obstacle course. You either bring $5 to participate, or you bring in like some sort of clothing. Hang on, I have it right here. You 1 piece of winter clothing, 2 hygiene products, or 3 cans of food. And it says, join us for a fun day of family, games, obstacle course run, crafts, Eddie sports team activities with the Eddies themselves, and bake sales. So that's all.
Job.
Very good.
And I hope you are taking the time to read your Bright Spots newsletters. Lots of good stuff.
It's a
You'll-
long
you'll
one
see.
this time, yeah.
Bonnie's son is in it. There's pictures.
Yeah.
Ben is in it, yes.
Yeah.
Ben had a great time.
Yeah. So,
He said
My
there were
son's
many,
best
many
friend
questions
is-
being
was
asked
in
to
the
him.
picture, too.
Many.
is he good?
Cutting the ribbon.
Yeah.
Leo.
Yeah, good. Yeah, so it's a great newsletter celebrating lots of things we do every month, so. Okay.
Any questions for our student reps?
Nice job, girls.
Well done. Yes. Moving on to the superintendent's report, which begins with our business and,
Yes, so tonight's an exciting night. Rob Callahan is here, and he's going to come to the mic. And I included in your packet around information, what the thoughts are, just so everyone knows. Rob, Jim Horn, Bill Webster, myself, the superintendent's advisories have been working on this for over a year. This is not something that's been done overnight. Rob has worked really hard around putting applications in for the satellite program that's being proposed for the new high school. So Rob's going to explain pretty much what he put in the document, I'm sure, about where we are, where we're going to be, and he's, as I noted in your superintendent's update, Lewiston School Committee did the same vote a week ago. No, Monday. I think it was Monday night, right?
Yep.
Monday night. And so we're doing ours tonight, and we really need this in order to have our full application up to the DOE, which Rob plans to deliver tomorrow with minutes from tonight's meeting, so that we can get, as quickly as possible, a DOE response regarding this. So Rob, it's all yours. And thank you for your hard work.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. So some of you will remember that I have been before the school committee before, and as the LRTC director, one of the questions I'm frequently asked by members, of the Auburn community and Poland, Turner, Lisbon is, why don't our students have more access to programming at LRTC? And it's a very difficult question, and the reality of it is based on the programming that we currently have and the limitations that we have around space. We have a very finite number of seats, so we try to divide them up as equally as we can, but to be quite honest with you, it's never enough to satisfy the demand we see from students. Every year, we say no to a lot more students than we'd like to. To any student, frankly, it's too many as far as I'm concerned. But that's particularly true in Auburn. We've had a very good relationship with Auburn and Edward Little High School for many years, and unfortunately, every year, as hard as we work, Mr. O'Neill and myself always have those names at the bottom of the list that we know have an interest, but we have no programmatic seating for them. So it's one of the things that we've been thinking about, and as this opportunity to construct a new school in this community has come about, we have had some serious conversations about the possibility of incorporating CTE space within that building. And I'm very pleased to be here tonight to sort of give you a broad, albeit broad, programmatic sketch of what that might look like. The bottom line is that this array that we're considering this evening would open 420 additional seats for students in the 6 communities that we serve, but particularly in Auburn. In particular, I think it does some really good things. It provides access in programs that we don't currently have, such as EMT and firefighting. It provides access to a whole segment of the high school student population, specifically 9th and 10th grades, that it's a very nominal service that we provide right now. We on occasion, we may have a dozen 9th and 10th graders with us currently. But it's also reflective of a very serious conversation that we've had with our community partners, who have said, our business is hurting. Our fire service or our EMT service is hurting because we can't get skilled labor. I think we've all heard that time and again. And what we think this represents is a very thoughtful response to those things. And in addition, I don't want to I don't want to gloss over this. When we were preparing these, the other constituency that we took very seriously was our students. We have a marketing program at LRTC. I dispatched them and gave them some live work, something that they love to do. And basically that consisted of running focus groups in each of the 6 high schools that we serve. and we went in and talked to specifically 9th and 10th graders about if we offered this program or this program, how likely would you be to take it? What kind of ideas do you have in terms of program that you'd like to see? And it was a great conversation. They had a lot of interest in terms of engaging with us. And quite frankly, the list that you see before you is not the list that we started with. We took that feedback very seriously, and we modified it based on what we heard from those students. We modified it based on what we heard from the employers. And based on what we looked at Bureau of Labor Statistics standards from not only this area, but the state of Maine, and then nationally. I view our work in CT as having an absolute mandate that when any student leaves us as a completer, that they have to be relevant in the workforce, in terms of post-secondary continuing on to train, be that at Maine Oxy, be that at Central Maine Community College or the University of Maine system. They need that viability going forward. So that was how that program list was arrived at. So that's sort of how we came to build that program array. What we're working through now, and I guess this is important to know as well, is a process. In the CTE world, career and technical education, what the state requires of me as a CTE director is that wherever and whenever I want to offer a new piece of programming, I've got to build a case for each individual program. And then that case has to be made before my center advisory committee. There's a group of superintendents, guidance directors, principals that sit and provide me feedback from each of those schools that I serve. They need to approve it. Then I need to bring it before the respective school committees and ask for their approval to even submit that application. The Department of Education wants there to be a very intentional kind of thought process underway. And in my mind, it's a very good thing, because there's a lot of responsibility that goes along with putting on CTE programming. But I think if it's done thoughtfully and done well, the results are very positive. So where we're at in terms of that process is one of the more introductory steps, but we've done our homework. We've developed through student feedback, through employer feedback, and through labor statistics and so forth. We've developed the program applications. What we're asking tonight specifically is the 10 programs that you see listed on the top of that second page, starting with biotechnology and ending with early education, is the approval to submit those applications to the state for approval. What this then allows us to do is bring that information back to the Edward Little Building Committee and to the Center Advisory Committee so that we can further shape those programs. And again, they may change, we may make modifications, but that at least allows us to have that pathway forward if again, the building committee and this respective committee, as we move forward, and I would anticipate being back before you, kind of updating you and letting you know where we're at. And then when we seek to get a final stamp of approval, I'd be back before you for that as well. I'd also add that, for those of you that may have not been over to LRTC to see what it is that we do and what students are up to with their CTE involvement, I'd invite you at any time to come over and see what we're doing. So, as I said, we're here seeking approval of those 10 programs. Again, I can't emphasize enough the excitement that we have about this opportunity. We see every day the investment that students have in career and technical education. It is unique in the sense that it pulls students, frankly, that may have lost interest in traditional schooling, who have different kind of ideas about the ownership they'd like to have of their own education, and it engages them in their community. And to me, that's extremely powerful. I also think it's extremely consistent with what we're trying to do in other areas, in other high school programming. But for these students, it resonates with them, and it gives them that place, that thing that they really care deeply about. So the opportunity to expand offerings to students with the building of this new high school, to me, is an enormous thing for this geographic area. We already see, again, that interest, and again, the idea of adding to that, I think, is extremely exciting. So thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Bonnie?
Rob, this is not your father's woodworking shop,
No.
right?
That's
So when
indeed.
when you're choosing or when it's been chosen for these, this is again from the business community,
That's
from
right.
the statistics that the workforce has given us.
That's right.
So you have to remember, you're not building a bookshelf.
No, no. So, all of our programming is designed, again, to make students viable, make them relevant in the workplace. So when you look at what students are doing, for example, in the electrical program, just as a for example, they are working under a master electrician towards, their helper's license. They are working both in our shop and in a mock-up environment, but they are also working under our master alongside professional electricians in a Habitat for Humanity house, for example, or wiring up a community center, for example. And what they leave with is, again, things like OSHA certification, things like, again, those 576 hours towards, towards an advanced electrical license. So it's highly relevant. The other thing that, again, it bears noting, and thank you for mentioning it, is that each one of our programs, as our center has an advisory committee, each one of those programs has a committee. Each one of these 10 programs proposed will have a committee. And they feed back to us. When they like what we're doing, we know it. When they prefer we not do something or we move away from it, we know that pretty well. And again, that's a good thing for us. I believe that CTE education needs to be extremely responsive to what the community and what local employers are telling us. And I emphasize the word local. Our folks, come to us from the folks that will be hiring these students as they leave us. So I want them as ready as they can be. And again, we have moved programs. We've brought our most recent programs, the plumbing program. We brought that online 3 years ago. And not only is it full, but our students are working. We have a really good track record of making that connection. Or some, for a fair number of our students, they choose to go on to community college or onto the University of Maine system, and again, they're ready for that as well. And I might add that one last great thing is that the community college also recognizes what we're doing. So most of our students, like for example, can earn 6 or 9 credits in high school towards an associate's degree. So.
Pat?
I know the answer to this question, but a lot of people at home might not know
Sure.
it. Can you speak to the funding mechanism for this and how it works? Because I think there is
Yes.
concern about
Yep.
increased in-school.
Yes. So that's a great question. In terms of the funding mechanism for CTE programming, one of the things that, as I talked about earlier, the state makes it intentionally very deliberate and moves you through a series of approvals. And the reason is that once you have those approvals and you bring a program online, funding comes up front. So, for example, the moment we say we're going to bring our firefighting program at Edward Little online, funding for that instructor, for those instructional materials will come, to Adam's office, or we'll figure out how that gets paid. But those expenses are paid up front. So again, that's why they really make you work for it, walking up to that. But again, I think it'll be very well worth it if we can make that happen. We will, in full disclosure, we're going to have to continue this discussion because one of the things that is missing from the funding formula is equipment. So I've projected some equipment cost. However, I will say we've had a great record at LRTC in terms of utilizing those partnerships in the community for not only advisory type situations, but also supplying us with materials. Where they can, they've donated equipment. So that's really allowed us to do things that ordinarily we wouldn't be able to. And frankly, any of the CTE centers in the state of Maine have really done well by their employers. They've been very supportive of what we do. So I'd look forward to bridging those gaps in that way.
I was very impressed with the robotic.
Yes, yes.
And I was impressed that you're actually building a very useful piece of equipment
Right,
for a police department.
right, right,
Can go in and remove
right,
bombs or whatever they need
Right.
to be removed remotely.
yes.
So I was very impressed with that. I thought that was really great. And the 3D printer was awesome.
Yeah. Again, it's all things that our students will be, utilizing. We have had students that leave that program, again, go up to work with Habib Dagger at the Composite Center at UMaine. others that, go to work in a variety of different engineering applications. But again, the fact that one of the local police agencies sought us out and said, we have a real issue in putting officers in harm's way because we don't have the robotic equipment to go into a situation that may be volatile, may be dangerous. Our students really took that as a challenge. How can we solve that problem and also serve our community? I think they're extremely proud of the fact that, they're going to do something which really has value.
That's great.
Bob?
Yeah, Tom, Katie, all of this sounds very good, but obviously this requires some space. And how do we fit into whether the allocation of the space they need?
I was going to actually speak to that as we get to the end of this, but one of the paragraphs on here, and on your page, on the second page, under next steps, second paragraph, really speaks to the reason that this is before us now, as in order to do this fairly unique partnership between a public high school and a CTE, we've approached the DOE and the powers that be with CTE, and they have agreed to allow us to go forward with this process to try and marry the two with a satellite program at the new EL. In order to do that, we need to, as a body, approve this application, and that has to go back to the DOE so that the process can be approved and can go forward. Well, we need to do it now because of the point that you bring up, Bob. In order to find the space, to design the space into this facility that we hope to build, we need the approval to do that. And we need to have that achieved before the architects start saying, okay, this is going to be our footprint, this is how much square footage we're going to need. All these programs require X number of square feet, and that has already been calculated. It's ready to be put into a design, and they're really just waiting for that, give us the green light that we can go forward with this. Two things that I think that are quite important that the community needs to know. One is that there is adequate space. We believe there's adequate space with proper design to manage this CTE program as part of New EL. And also that the funding for the CTE programs does not come from our general fund, our school funds, our public high school. It is funded as a separate channel, so it will not affect our budget.
Well, it will eventually. Adam did some research around what does Lewiston budget in their general fund for CTE, and they do. It's not right. It's not huge.
Yes.
And then through our ED 279, that report we get every year for how much money will be allocated, there is a line, CTE line. So Adam did some comparison about what Lewiston receives for CTE dollars and what they put in their general fund. And so we've kind of looked at it, we're starting to look at that. So yes, you're right that the DOE knows we're looking at it for it going in the new high school. They will pay for the building of those spaces. Rob's going to work on the equipment end of those spaces. And then we're going to have to look at what do we need for upkeep of the program, which will be part of, like you said, there'll be revenue for it, right, and there'll be expenditures for it. So you'll see it as an expenditure, but you'll also see revenue coming in. So we are watching that.
So we believe the space. There is certainly community demand and interest. So Alfreda?
So the students that are coming from those various schools will also be participating within, Edward Little High School as well as as Lewiston.
That's right. Yep.
This is so needed. I mean, kids are crying for this, and our workforce. I talk to constituents, and I talk to, some of our small business people, and that's what they're saying, that they need it now.
Yep. I agree. I hear the same thing.
Right. We hear
All
that.
feel the same.
So you have, the question you have before you is the same question that Lewiston took Monday night.
Right. I would entertain a motion to approve applying to the Maine Department of Education for expanding the programs at the Lewiston Regional Technical Center in conjunction with the new Edward Little High School.
So moved.
So moved.
Great. Second?
Second.
Very good. I know we're going to rush to this. Any further discussion?
2 seconds.
All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you very much. Great.
Thank you very much.
Really look forward to it,
Thank you, Rob.
Yes,
Do I.
Very
wonderful.
much.
And it took a lot of work to put this together.
Sounds great.
On top of all your other duties.
Yes, yeah.
Right, with everything else.
Thank you.
And the DOE was very good to support Rob in getting these done in a way that we
Yes.
could turn it around.
Yeah. So
Good, thank
we
you.
have a lease agreement.
Yeah, so this, the city has the community block grant funding, and they do community gardens, if you know. The one at Webster, if you've ever been by it, is beautiful. It's behind the old Webster School. And there's one down on Newberry Street. I guess if you go down to the end, it looks like there's a park, and it's a community garden. I haven't gone down there, but it's very nice, is what I've heard. And so the city looks for other land opportunities, and so they approached Adam and I about the land adjacent to Washburn School. And for many of you that are new to the board, we have property there at 118 Whitney Street. Am I right? 115. Oh, I was close. I had 15 or 18 in my head. So 115 Whitney Street was an apartment building that we had. And we had that because if there was ever an expansion at Washburn, we thought it was important to own that property in case we had expansion there. It was torn down as part of CDBG money when Clint was, Deshays was here as our city manager. So they asked, what do you think about that? Would you be willing to let us do a community garden there? So we met with them, and we thought it made most sense that the city lease that property to us for like $1 a year so that they take the liability, the work on it, and they're leasing our property, rather than it got a little muddy on, was the city going to be liability? Are we going to be liability at CDBG? So we thought, why don't we draw up a lease to lease it out? It would be a 5-year lease, and then we would discuss about whether we would renew that lease. Right now, Washburn is not on the horizon for a big expansion. They know we need some flexibility, so this is to authorize Adam and I to start developing the lease. This would not open until next fall, so it's not going to open this year, but they need everything in place so that they can work to get it ready to open the following year. I think it's great for that community. It's a very walking community. There are regulations about who applies to have a plot at the garden. There's a woman who oversees the garden, so she would be there to take applications. She helps support it. There would be a 6-foot fence around it with a lock so that it would be secure. And so we're excited to partner with the city on this, and so that was our best thinking around the lease agreement.
Questions? Bonnie?
Troy Street, the Troy Street development, workforce housing.
Yes, yes.
Where would those children go to school?
That may be Walton. Walton
Right.
takes Sherwood Heights. Sherwood Heights takes the library. So Sherwood takes from the library area, so I think it's going to be close to the Sherwood Heights
It
line.
wouldn't go to Washburn.
I don't believe so. We can double check that. I don't know when the line crosses. Troy is near the
Troy
Rite
Street.
Aid over here
By
near
the library.
And Library
That's on
Avenue,
that side.
Troy Street and
Might be
Library.
Walton on this. I don't think you pick up until
Yeah, it's right
down
behind
here on Newberry Street. I think Walton picks up.
We've got this little tiny piece over here
Oh, okay, all
by
right,
the library.
okay.
Well, my point
Okay,
being is
right.
that, would we need this for an expansion, whatever time? But if we're going to do it for 5 years, then we can always reassess it.
Oh, yes.
Because it's going to
Yep.
take 5 years to get it built over there, probably.
Those are raised beds, though. I mean, you can move those.
Yeah.
Those
Right,
are
they
all-
know, because part of the agreement was if it was ours, we might have to help them find a relocation. With them leasing it, we would say we can't lease for another 5 years.
Okay.
They would find another place for them, so. Right.
Further questions? Was there any consideration on safety for bringing in adults that close to our student population?
No, because it's outside their gate. They already have a fence, so it's
Okay.
just going to fence around. Yeah, I I don't see a concern there.
All right.
And I think most of it is used probably after hours, weekends, but I think they can be there. But they have supervision, so if there's any vandalism, they did learn a lesson, a lower fence is more susceptible because we can quickly jump over it. So they did say a higher fence makes it more challenging, and where there are so many apartments in the area, they figure there'll be a lot of probably people watching it to say, what's going on over there that doesn't look like it should be. And probably our cameras from our school overlooks some of that area, so that will also support them as well.
Good. Is that in conjunction with St. Mary's
Yes,
program?
it's with the St. Mary's program, yes. So,
Further questions?
It's very successful.
yeah, oh yeah, they're beautiful.
I would entertain a motion to authorize the superintendent and business manager to enter into a lease agreement with the city of Auburn on behalf of the Auburn School Department for the purpose of housing a community garden at 115 Whitney Street.
So moved.
Second? Further discussions, questions? Hearing none. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very
We'll
much.
let them know, they'll be excited.
Good deal. Let's see. Elfrida, we got a city council update for our school items.
Yes. The strategic planning, as you know, Bonnie spoke about that last time. I just wanted to give you some dates. The application deadline was yesterday or the day before, but I'm sure if somebody still wanted to be on that, they would accept you. November 6th, that was the deadline, but November 10th, the applications they will be going through the applications to make their selections, and November 19th, the council will meet to approve those committee members, and the big launching of that visionary committee would be November 29th. The other thing I have to report is the 150th celebration team. We have many, many subcommittees, and if you want to volunteer, they're looking for volunteers still. It's not too late because we've got time to work on many, many items. You know, there's New Year's, there's birthday, there's a memorial parade, and alumni weekend. There's all kinds of it. So just check the website, and if you think you'd like to volunteer, they'd love to have the assistance. And Sabrina Best is the chair of all of that, but there are many chairs of the subcommittee, so you would start with Sabrina Best. We had a workshop, on Monday. Our workshop had two items. We talked about the Lewiston-Auburn passenger rail project, and it's a combination of rail and freight as well. But right now, the distance of that passage is from the Lewiston-Auburn area to Portland, and then with the expectation that from Portland you can pick up other railroads systems to get down to ultimately to the Boston area, and stops along the way. Bob Stone and Jonathan Labonte are reported out almost a 300-page report, and if you're interested in looking at that, I would suggest you contact one of them to get a copy of that report. Bruce Bigford was appointed as a new member on that committee. And there is interest. I mean, I mentioned it myself. I would love to see us connect way back into Canada, because we've got our arena. We would be able to get all kinds of families coming down who wouldn't have to take a car, who could stay here, use our facilities, stay overnight, use the arena. We could really make all of this be very vibrant. So if we could plan all of that, it'll take a while, but so they are going to. Bruce Bickford did assure me that he wants to see it. He wants to see that Canadian connection. The schooner. I'm going to pass this down. This isn't and I'd like it back too, but this is a picture of the new schooner memory care facility that we have approved a TIF on. And is building very quickly. As you know, on Stetson Road, there is the current schooner nursing care facility and rehab center, and this will be an extension of that. So it's going to be huge, absolutely huge, and it's very, very good for Auburn in terms of business, so we're really excited about that project. The cable TV guys talked about their advisory board update. And just in case people don't know, if you want to watch anything that's local, the channels got changed, I think about a year ago, perhaps, right, Leroy? I think they changed those. And so if you wanted to view any of these proceedings, committees, that kind of thing, local stuff, go to channels 1301, 1302, or 1303. Those are the channels to look at to see what's going on in the community. In the library, there are 3 new ambassadors who have been approved, and I'll give you the name after we've submitted that. It was the governance board that approved it, so now we have to have the board of trustees approve it, and then I'll be able to give you the names of the 3 people. But I'll also be able to, at the next meeting, give you the revised and final copy of what is an ambassador, what does it look like, what's the job description. Wanted to announce that Barbara Trafton will be leaving the Board of Trustees after all these years because she is moving. She and her husband are moving to Brunswick, and so to be near family, and I can understand that. So currently we have, I believe, what, a 7-member board, right, Pat? Is it 7 now with all of that? 7-member board? More than that? I'm not sure.
They're trying to get it to like 16.
16, but they have a few they're going to hold off on, they said at the last meeting that we had. But so, and last but not least, the Mayor's Action Group on Agriculture and Resource Protection, which is, the acronym is MAG-ARP, MAG-ARP. We viewed a really interesting YouTube, and if you can find it on YouTube, it's called the Never Sink Farm. Never Sink Farm. And this is a farm, it has 1.5 acres. They produce, they gross over $350,000 on that 1.5 acre property. And it's a no-till farm. So we're looking at sustainable farming and getting a lot out of a smaller spaces. So we're trying to encourage, get people to start farming, young people to start farming, and they don't have to have a humongous piece of property to do so. But what we are doing is we're refining the ordinance. The ordinance that currently exists that talks about the 50%. You have to be able to produce 50% of your whatever you're growing, and it has to be on a 10-acre parcel. That's going to be changed. They're both going to be changed, and there's a lot of language to address that. And I will present that to you when we're done with the whole thing and have approved it. So,
You did a great job on Monday night, and I was able to listen to it when you reported out on the school committee. I thought Andy Titus was going to jump over this bench and come and get us. So when he assumed we had already made the decisions that were going to be announced on our forum, that is going to be November 15th.
Right, and I did say that.
The wrong date was wrong.
Right, I corrected it twice. I said it
And
twice.
I didn't hear that,
Yeah.
but that's good. But the idea is that we worked very hard on doing 30 selections of what the community might want to put in it. Nothing has been decided. And I thought, oh, God, Andy was going to...
I made that clear, though, after. I think he did, I don't know why he didn't understand that, but no, it was, if you watch the whole thing.
I did.
Yeah.
I did watch the whole thing.
Okay.
I
So
watched it over.
I think people understand. Yeah, because that's what your card says, that you've mailed to everybody, that we've mailed to everybody. Yeah.
Very good, thank you. Leverage Learning is going to have a...
Yes, that kicks off tomorrow, and we are up to 74 participants, so that's really good news. So I just wanted to tell you about that. If you're in town tomorrow and Friday and want to pop into the Hilton Garden Inn, you're welcome to attend some of the sessions if you want. I am the general sessions speaker tomorrow morning at 8:30.
Are you the keynote?
I'm kicking it off tomorrow morning, yes.
Very good.
Good.
Pat, have any of your committees met?
The Share Center met last night, but I had to be at the polls for a candidate, so she's going to send me the minutes for next time.
All right. We did have a new EL Building Committee meeting, which was the subcommittees. So it wasn't actually a building committee meeting, but the subcommittees that are addressing the specific concerns. discussing where we were, what priorities that they're considering, and would bring forward reflective of what the community is looking for in a new high school. The community will weigh in on those this week from Thursday, isn't it? I'm correct? Week from Thursday. The full building committee will have an opportunity to review that information on Tuesday evening. The public is welcome to join us on Thursday and share their thoughts. We're going to open it up. We want public feedback. We want public information and sentiment. This is a rare opportunity. It's a once-in-a-lifetime rare opportunity to share your thoughts about what this new EL is going to be for this community. It's an exciting time, and we want everyone to be a part of that. So Thursday night on the 15th at
6 o'clock at the ELHS gym.
There we go.
We are going to hopefully do Facebook Live again and follow up with the survey for the public who were not in attendance.
Who's writing the survey?
Shelley is going to get feedback from me after Tuesday night, and we'll be working on it Wednesday and Thursday to have it prepared to go Friday or Monday.
Time, yep.
We're on it.
So is the building committee meeting before November 15th?
Yes.
Yes,
or
Tuesday.
after?
Building
Tuesday,
committee is
13th.
Tuesday
13th.
at 6 o'clock to do a draw. It will be a run-through for Thursday night's public forum. So it's a practice run to solidify what we're rolling out to the public, to make sure it's clear, concise. Because, you know, when you live it and breathe it, similar to when we do presentations, when the subcommittees have been living and breathing it, and then they want to deliver it, they have to make sure it's clear and concise and not too much. So that's what we're working on Tuesday night. Yeah. And Rob Callahan will be at the public forum to explain the CTE.
Very good. Policy, we've had a policy meeting, and we are discussing 3 policies at this point. The new graduation policy is under discussion and revision. That will come before us maybe December, likely. And then a couple of policies related to restraint and things, so those will also come before us.
And transportation?
And transportation, yeah.
Well, some of us will be meeting next Tuesday. Hopefully, a few of you school committee members who I did invite, I'm going to follow up with you after, to discuss the transportation policy, as well as Michelle, Billy Hunter, and myself, and then we'll go from there once we've gathered some information and some thoughts on that.
Very good. Negotiations will begin next month on the teachers' contract, so that will kick off. We've had a preliminary meeting of our own team, but you will be aware that that is taking place, so that their contract expires August 30th, yeah, of 19, right. So we'll be looking to have a new
We'll
contract.
have an executive session, one of our December meetings.
Yes, to,
Go over it.
for priorities.
No.
We'll
No,
have another one.
no, what I did is not have that and do 2 meetings
2 meetings in December.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yep.
That was one
of-
that we weren't sure we were going to do, so it's a busy time of year to do presentations and so forth, because people are very busy, a lot of things going on. So this allows the 2 meetings in December to
And we've
cover.
often only had one. Depends on how the calendar falls.
Right.
Falls with the holidays, so anyway. So upcoming meetings, as mentioned, December 5th and December 19th. There will be a workshop on the 5th.
Both.
On both, actually, now, that's correct. Any future agenda items, let's Katie and myself, no, was no executive session this evening, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
Second.
moved.
All those in favor? Thank you very much. Good deal.
God bless America.